Okay, so today I want to discuss once more these long-awaited HD remasters on the Nintendo Switch or Switch 2, being Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and Metroid Prime 2 and 3. Now that the Switch 2 is revealed and we know we are getting GameCube NSO alongside Wind Waker on that service, is there any hope left for any of these games to get their proper HD remasters? Wind Waker and Twilight Princess already exist, why not release those? But to me, the more peculiar one is Metroid Prime, as Prime 2 has not been announced for the GameCube lineup. So that is what we are talking about today. Of course, if you are new here and enjoy Nintendo Switch speculation, theories, discussion, all that fun stuff, I would appreciate you subscribing. Let's get into it. Alrighty, folks, welcome back. I hope your day is going well. So I think I speak for a lot of us that when we were watching that Switch 2 Direct on April 2nd and they announced GameCube NSO, we were all very excited. Don't get me wrong. Cannot be happier that GameCube NSO is happening. However, then they showed Wind Waker, and that's just not right. As happy as I am that the original version of Wind Waker will be playable on the Switch 2, it definitely feels weird because Wind Waker already had an HD version, and for me, it's not about the graphics, right? Because I know a lot of people have different opinions on Wind Waker OG versus HD because there's too much bloom and the lighting's weird in the HD version. To me, it's not even about that. To me, it's because Wind Waker HD fundamentally fixed a lot of the issues with that game, specifically with the fast sale and the Triforce quest. So even though I love Wind Waker, I don't particularly want to play the original version for more than a couple hours, probably. I don't want to get that deep into it because I know there is a better version of it from a progression standpoint. Graphics aside, I personally like Wind Waker HD's graphics, but graphics aside, it's about the progression for me. So when I saw Wind Waker announced for GameCube NSO, I was like, oh no, we really aren't going to get these, which to be honest is what I've been saying for a while. I've made several videos over the past year or two that I really wasn't expecting Wind Waker or Twilight Princess to get their Wii U ports brought over to the Switch. I'll have that video linked down below, but the idea is there's literally too much Zelda stuff for them to re-release right now and release in general, because at that point we had the rumored Breath of the Wild 4K remaster. On top of that, we had Tears of the Kingdom, which I wasn't even expecting at this point in time. I was predicting a Hyrule Warriors game for this year, and at that point we're talking about, okay, 2026, when does Wind Waker or Twilight Princess really fit in to the Zelda lineup? Because next year, I think there's a good chance we have something new for the series. So I wasn't really sure where Wind Waker fit into everything, especially when you look at, like, okay, Skyward Sword HD did fine, but do you really want to release another HD Zelda game on the Switch 1? Feels a little weird. Maybe you save that for Switch 2 a little bit later. But yeah, when we saw Wind Waker in that direct, I think a lot of us were just like, okay, well that's a wrap on Wind Waker and probably Twilight Princess as well. However, in the little lineup when they're showing all of the GameCube games that'll be available over the coming months into 2025, late 2025, interestingly, Metroid Prime 2 is not on that list. So that has me wondering, well, Maybe it's a wrap for Zelda, for the Zelda games, but what about Metroid Prime? We also had this interview with Nate Bildorf, Nintendo's Senior Vice President of Product Development. He was doing an interview with Kinda Funny's Tim Geddes, and in that interview, Tim Geddes asked him, like, hey, what about Wind Waker HD? Does this mean Wind Waker HD will not happen? And Nate Bildorf replied saying that a game being added to Nintendo Switch's online library for subscribers doesn't necessarily prevent a remaster from being released in the future. And then he talks about how there are several games on Switch Online that are still available in some other form for players who don't want to commit to a subscription service, which is true. However, usually we get the remake first, and then later down the line, they will release it on NSO. I think of something like Link's Awakening, which in that case, Game Boy literally wasn't even part of NSO at that time. But really, there's a lot of games that don't have their NSO versions on there. Super Mario RPG is not available. Mario vs. Donkey Kong is not available. Neither of the GBA Advance Wars games are available. So a lot of the time, if a game gets a remake, it usually means it's not going to come to NSO, at least for a long while. But even still, of course, a Nintendo executive is going to give a kind of non-answer, like, oh, nothing's definitive. We could still have this door open for later if we do decide to release Wind Waker HD. So this is a nice thing for him to say, but it's still kind of like non-news. I have been saying not to expect Wind Waker or Twilight Princess. However, I will say, for those that want to hold on to the hopium, I would say there actually is still a chance for these games to come back, maybe next year, maybe even 2027. It kind of depends on how long they want to support the Switch 1 with new releases. Of course, these would be old games, but they would be new releases on store shelves for Switch 1. We're already seeing Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life confirmed for 2026. Would they want to release, let's say, Wind Waker HD as a holiday game in next year for Switch 1? Maybe there's some Switch 2 enhancements, of course, but would that be something they want to pursue? It is worth noting that GameCube NSO is only on Switch 2. That is not available on the Switch 1, so maybe that's kind of like their loophole. It's like, well, yeah, it's on GameCube NSO for Switch 2 users, but also we have 150 million Switch 1s out there. Maybe we should give them a little something to tide them over as we wind down this console's life cycle. So maybe that's where a Wind Waker or even a Twilight Princess fit in. Twilight Princess is not confirmed for Switch 2 NSO yet. However, considering Wind Waker is there, it's probably going to come. Maybe not this year. Maybe they save it for next or something. But Twilight Princess, you have to imagine, is going to come eventually, right? But really, when I've been talking about Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and why I don't think they will come, it's because I was saying, like, yeah, there's so much stuff they would need to release, and usually Zelda is, like, one thing per year. Well, in 2025, we're getting 3 things. We're getting Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, plus Wind Waker on NSO if you want to count that as well. So could we see a 2026 lineup that has a Wind Waker HD remaster and something else? I think it's likelier now than it was a few weeks ago. Like, at least in my mind, like, I think that's actually not completely impossible. Maybe you do Twilight Princess instead because Wind Waker is there. Maybe we don't get Twilight Princess on NSO. We will have to wait and see. Nintendo is a mysterious company. They work in mysterious ways. Usually something being added to NSO means that, at least for the near future, they won't do a remaster, but they can do whatever they want, I guess. However, the 2 games I am way more curious about now more than ever are Metroid Prime 2 and 3. The fact that they didn't announce Prime 2 in that GameCube lineup, it feels targeted. And if we go 6 months from now, maybe we get to like a September Direct and they announce another wave of NSO games and Prime 2 is just casually thrown in there, that's going to feel like a gut punch because they're giving me a little bit of hope here. So when they did that big lineup of games where they showed the Pokemon GameCube games, Chibi Robo, Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance, as well as Mario Strikers and a few others, Metroid Prime 2 was not there. And you would think that you just showed your new Metroid Prime game with 4K 120 support, or I guess it's 1080 120 and mouse controls on the Switch 2. You're promoting it as like a big Switch 2 game. You would think that alongside your big new Metroid Prime that has a Switch 2 edition, you would want to also push Prime 2 if it was going to be on GameCube NSO in the near future and promote it alongside it. We still do not have a release date for Metroid Prime 4, meaning that we will likely be getting at least one more Direct before it comes out. At least in my opinion, I think we will get a June Direct for either a September or October release for Prime 4 alongside that Switch 2 edition. If it was dated, if it had a date right now, I think I would be giving up hope right now. However, considering the marketing hasn't really even started for this game, right? We've seen some trailers, we've seen some gameplay. I went hands-on with it. I love what I played of it. The fact that the marketing ramp-up hasn't happened yet, I still feel like they could surprise us with Prime 2 and 3 remastered, shadow dropped on Switch 1, and a Nintendo Direct in either June or even September. Especially when you look at that Switch 1 lineup, I mean, yes, all eyes are on Switch 2, but we already kind of know that Woolly World is going to come to Switch 1 later this year. What other, secrets do they have for Switch 1? Is it just going to be Woolly World, Pokemon Legends EA, and Prime 4? Is that the second half lineup for Switch 1? Or will there be something else? Because right now, I mean, it is completely vacant with no dated games, just Prime 4 and Legends EA with that, vague 2025 window. Maybe we don't know what's going on with the second half for Switch 1 because the marketing hasn't ramped up for Prime 4 yet. And part of that marketing push, part of their rollout, is going to be putting Prime 2 and 3 as remastered games on the eShop like they did for Pikmin 1 and 2, really just a few weeks before release for those games. Or maybe, and this is the best outcome, maybe it's a combination of multiple things. Maybe they didn't want to announce it until a little bit closer to Prime 4's actual release, but also maybe they wanted to wait until after the Switch 2 was revealed so they could announce a Switch 2 edition of these games alongside it. Can you imagine if they shadow drop Prime 2 and 3 in, let's say, I don't know, June, right? Let's say they shadow drop them at the June Direct, but alongside the Switch 1 versions, they have a Switch 2 version that has a 4K 60 mode, a 1080 120 FPS mode, alongside mouse controls for Metroid Prime 2 and 3. Maybe you also get an update for Metroid Prime 1 remastered at the same time that adds all of these nice bells and whistles. That would be like ultimate best case scenario. to me, it's just the fact that they didn't announce it. If you have a new Metroid game coming out, why not add the old one to the service to get people more excited in the ramp up to launch of that game later this holiday? Something fishy is going on with Metroid Prime 2 and 3. 3 especially would be especially shafted if Prime 2 gets added to the GameCube NSO service, because if that happens, then when do we see Prime 3? I mean, what? In like 5 years, whenever they do eventually add a Wii to Switch Online? I mean, that would probably be like literally like a 2030 addition to the service. I'm not saying they need to get Prime 2 and 3 out because of like lore reasons or anything. I don't think it's like that, but we've seen them do it for so many franchises on Switch. Most notably, all the Xenoblade games are available, of course. That was a little bit done differently with actual standalone releases and kind of pseudo remakes. But Pikmin 1 and 2 came out, what, like a month before Pikmin 4? And then Bayonetta 1 and 2 also came out around the same time that Bayonetta 3 was announced. So to me, it's more of just like having the entire legacy of a franchise on the console. But we have seen in the past them trying to catch people up on a franchise before the new thing comes out. So it would just be kind of weird. Okay, you get Prime 2 on GameCube NSO, and then Prime 3 is gone. I don't know. It doesn't feel right to me. I probably am dreaming too high with a Switch 2 edition of those games, though, because the rumor has been that Iron Galaxy would do Metroid Prime 2 and 3. Of course, Retro busy with Prime 4 itself. Would Iron Galaxy really do such a great remaster and have all these nice bells and whistles, have mouse con support? I mean, that would be incredible. Maybe you have a smaller team within Retro kind of helping them with that. That is the best case scenario. They release them, they go back and update Prime Remastered with like a free Switch 2 edition update or something that adds mouse controls. That would be just absolutely amazing. It is worth noting that Nate the Hate has said that he expects Prime 2 to be released on GameCube NSO. Not sure how much stock to put into that. Nate the Hate it's weird because a lot of the time he'll do predictions that are kind of like disguised as leaks and information. However, other times they are actually just predictions, as we saw a lot of what he expected to pop up in the March Direct and in the April Direct did not end up being true. So I'm not sure if that's something he's heard or what, but I guess at least if you want to, put stock into that, Nate the Hate does expect it to be just a GameCube NSO game, but we'll see what happens there. I don't know, man. It's probably cope, but I really don't think we can completely write off any of these games, especially Prime 2 and 3. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, maybe, right? I was already saying, like, I don't expect these games to happen, at least not in the near future, but if they do want to support Switch 1 for several more years, could Wind Waker and Twilight Princess be like a 2027 game on Switch 1? I mean, at that point, GameCube NSO is like kind of old news, so maybe. I just don't want to believe that we're going to end up getting Prime 4 released, and then like sometime in 2026, they just put Prime 2 on GameCube NSO with no updated controls. You're playing it with sticks, not even motion, and then Prime 3 will be added to Wii NSO in like 5 years. I just really don't want to believe that is the reality that we are gonna, experience here. I really hope these games at least get Pikmin 1 and 2 style remasters on the eShop or something here. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think there is any hope for these long-awaited HD remasters on the Switch or Switch 2? Would you like to see Switch 2 editions of these games as well? I mean, for Prime 2 and 3, I think it's pretty obvious what they could do. For Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I mean, maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe they wanted to wait and do like, well, it's not Wind Waker HD, it's actually Wind Waker 4K, and they really boost it up. They add mouse control aiming for your arrows, that kind of thing. All very basic features, but like, honestly, maybe that's part of it. Maybe they just didn't want to, release it on Switch 1, where essentially it would be the exact same as the Wii U version. Now they can have some extra bells and whistles there. Let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo discussions, theories, all that fun stuff. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames, and check out my other channel at It's Amiibo. You can click on one of these two videos to listen to me ramble about even more Nintendo stuff. And until next time, folks, peace.